Good evening, everyone. My name's Tara. I'm alcoholic.
Yeah!
Thank you, Michael. President of my fan club. I want to apologize for the footwear this evening. I thought that I had packed the dress shoes. Alas, I had not. So I'll be speaking in Chuck Taylors tonight, you know. Not my finest moment, but whatever, you know, willing to go to any length. So I want to thank Neil for being a gracious host. I am from Orange County, but I told him if it'll help you, if it'll save you, I'll just go with it. I'll just be like, yeah, I'm from Phoenix. There it is, you know. But I do have a sobriety date of 11/30 of 2001. I have a sponsor. Her name is Duffy, and I have a home group in the city of Yorba Linda, California, the Ohio Street Group. And probably the truest thing when I was new, I was not in love with Alcoholics Anonymous. Took me a minute, but I do want to welcome you to this fellowship, and I hope that you can find what we have found here. And I'm going to tell you in a general way what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. And I grew up in Southern California. I grew up in the beautiful city of Santa Ana. And for those of you who aren't, you know, somebody knows where Santa Ana. You better work a real hard program, sister. So for those who aren't familiar with Santa Ana, Santa Ana doesn't really belong in Orange County. I don't know how Santa Ana made it into Orange County. I think it was a deal with LA County. Like LA County was like, we have enough stuff going on. You got to take Santa Ana, right? And it's just grimy, you know, like me. And I fit in well there, but I come from a long line of alcoholics. My dad was alcoholic, his dad was alcoholic, and so on. I'm German, Irish, and Italian, so I like to drink, I like to fight, and I have a really bad temper. I've always had a propensity towards violence, and I have an older sister who works for the local police department, and I have a younger brother who right out of high school did a tour of duty in Iraq. Both of them are genius caliber students. My sister has a master's degree in criminal justice, and my brother like double majored at the University of Chicago in like economics and political science, right? And then there's me, and I am a violent, mean, nasty, vicious, unlovely, drunk creature. And I'm what my Al-Anon mom tells my alcoholic dad, that's exactly what you deserve, right? And so I'm just really a carbon copy of him. And you know, for me, I believe I was alcoholic long before I took that first drink. I was always just ill at ease and maladjusted, and there was always just a degree of separation between me and you. I was consumed with what you thought about me and me primarily from a very young age. And I grew up on this street where all the kids that were my age were boys, so I grew up a tomboy, and they taught me, you know, what any young up-and-coming female needs to know in the world of alcoholism, right? Like how to drink and cuss and fight and stick my thumb through a Budweiser beer can and, you know, hustle dudes at the bar and things of that nature. And so the very first drink that I took was with the boys on the street, and what I recall is that the first time I drank, I got insanely drunk, and I had a blast. I fell down, I broke things, and I had a great time. But what I do remember is that I finally felt okay, right? It was like what a normal person feels on any given Wednesday. It was just like the playing field was finally leveled. I wasn't so consumed about what you thought about me. I finally thought that I was pretty cool at that point. And another thing is that from that point on, I never drank in moderation. There was never like a period of time where I was controlling and enjoying my drinking. I never drank in moderation. I hate the feeling of buzzed or like slightly intoxicated. Like talking about it right now irritates me even, actually. That's not my goal. It's like bad sex, right? It's like, I'm never going for that, but if that's all you got, like, I guess, you know? But not ever my goal. And so I just drank alcoholically from the very beginning. And just to give you a brief glimpse on what it was like an average night of drinking, by the time I was 15, I had a fake ID. My name was Lisa Simpson, and and it was like that part in Bill's story where he was like, I had arrived. It was like the golden ticket, right? And I was going to bars and clubs, and I found a group of people that drank like me and hated like me. I grew up in this little like punk rock scene in Orange County, and an average night is I would show up to the bar, this little dive bar in Costa Mesa. It was like the diviest dive bar in probably Orange County, I would say. And the bouncer at the bar was of sordid character as well. And I would show up drunk because we called it pre-gaming, because, I didn't want to spend my money at the bar. I had to be drunk beforehand because, I had allocated specifically in my line item budget for narcotics for that money, right? And so I wouldn't spend my narcotic money at the bar. That was a silly move. So I would show up drunk at the bar, and the bouncer, this guy Paul, I'm 15 years old, my name's Lisa Simpson, and that dude is giving me a pep talk about how I should conduct myself that evening, right? So you might want to take a look at your drinking when like the bouncer at the diviest dive bar in town is talking to you about morals, right? He's like, can you just make it to the headlining band before I have to drag you out in a headlock again, And I'm like, oh, come on, And so I have this problem when I drink, and it's called my mouth. And if you ask my fiance, that's my problem sober as well. And so I'm that girl that you go to the bar with, and I'm like, you got something to say to me, you're going to say it to him. And then the whole bar wants to beat you up, and Paul's dragging me out in a headlock, right? And, just a delightful person. And then I have this signature move as well, and it's after all that happens, and it's, after the bar is closed or whatever, and the only people on the road are like us and the police, and I like to jump out of the vehicle at a red light and fight with the driver, whoever's driving, and like usually it's the dude that I'm with that evening, and he's like, get back in the car, Tara, I'm on parole, I'm gonna go back to prison. I'm like, fine, go, bye, like I'm already talking to your homeboy, see ya, and I'm like smashing the windshield and, ripping the windshield wipers off, and just a gem. And then I get home to my boyfriend, who was not that guy, and he's like, what happened to you? And I'm like, I don't know. It could be like road rash, maybe, carpet burn. I'm not certain, but I heard that I essentially beat myself up. I fell off a bar. I fall down a lot. Like I'm 6 feet tall. Like most people are like, wow, you must be so athletically inclined. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. My kids are like, please don't run in public, Mom. Please don't, It's like a giraffe with palsy. And so he doesn't think I'm funny, but I know I am, right? So in any case, that's what it was like, and that's when it was still working, by the way. That's when it was still good. That's when alcohol was still working for me, actually, and in fact. And so I'll tell you this, like I said, I love Alcoholics Anonymous, and had I known at 13 years old when that marijuana cigarette was handed to me that I would need to maintain a singleness of purpose from a podium in Provo, Utah, I would have politely declined that, right? I will not take that marijuana cigarette. I'm going to need to maintain a singleness of purpose 30 years from now in Provo, Utah. But I could not foresee that. So I was like, yes, of course I would like to do that. And so I'll just tell you that there was never a substance presented to me where I was like, oh no, I just don't think I could. You know what I mean? I was like, absolutely, I want that. And so my disease progressed very rapidly. And what ended up happening is by the time I was 18, I was severely dependent on alcohol and narcotics, and I ended up just absolutely devastating the lives of anybody who cared about me, came in contact with me. I ended up out on the streets selling drugs. I fell into this world of criminality that I just absolutely became obsessed with, and my dating demographic is inmates. I like to date the convicts. I'll wait out front of the parole department, you know what I mean? It's like hometown buffet, really, is what it is, you know? And so it just got really bad really rapidly, and I was selling drugs and committing robberies, and my parents were just devastated, by my disease, and the Orange County Sheriff's was kicking in their door because they were looking. Well, I'll tell you why. Because court is so inconvenient when you're strung out. That's why. You know what I mean? It's like, do you promise to appear? I'm like, absolutely, I do. Absolutely, I do. And I was like, the minute they'd let me out, I'd be like, catch me if you can. And here's the funny thing about that. They do, you know what I mean? Every time, and it's at the worst time, really. It's always at the worst time that they catch up with you. So, they'd wake my parents up with loaded firearms to their head and kick in the front door on a couple different occasions. And because once I take that first drink, there is not a single thing in the world that's going to stop me from that next one. And there is nothing that I won't do, right, to with respects to that phenomenon of craving, right? And I'm a huge thief. My poor mother would walk from room to room in her home with her purse because I'll steal everything that I can get my hands on. If it's too big, I'll just lay down next to it and tell you it's mine. You know what I mean? Just a scumbag. And it just got horrifically awful out there on the streets. And I was on the boulevard. I've just run the whole gambit. And I remember in the end, towards the end, the first time I tried to get sober, I was 21. And I would pray to God that he would take me in my sleep so that I didn't have to wake up and live another single solitary day as this monster that I had become. And because I did come from a good upbringing, I was raised with morals and values and principles, but after I take that first drink, the drugs and the alcohol dictate my every single move, dictates who I'm with, where I go, what I do. I don't have a choice, right? I don't have a say-so in the trajectory of my life at that point. And so, and the insanity of this disease is I would pray, God, please just kill me in my sleep so I don't have to wake up another single solitary day. And the insanity is the very next day, the very next week, I'd be in this truck with these two dudes that I robbed last week who are definitely going to get what I owe them this week, parked along a block wall, not able to exit the vehicle. And I'd pray, God, please just let me live through this one, And so I've been violated and victimized in every conceivable form or fashion. And the first time I tried to get sober, I was 21, and I didn't obtain permanent sobriety until I was 25. And those 4 years, I'll tell you what, like I said, I was a dangerous person in the end, not because I'm like some gunslinger or something, but because my mentality towards the end was, what are you going to do to me that hasn't already been done, right? And so, but those 4 years of coming in and out and in and out and in and out of Alcoholics Anonymous were by far the most painful times in my life. And the reason for that is because with every failed attempt, it just reconfirmed what I already knew, which was you really are just a pile, Tara. You're not going to get sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. I thought you had to be a fundamentally good person or something to begin with to get sober here. I knew where I fell on that spectrum of good and bad. I knew there were good people, and I knew there were people like me. And there had to be people like me because what would the police do all day long if there wasn't, And so first time I got sober, like I said, I was 21. I went into treatment down in South Orange County, and that's where like all the real polished type of people are, and I was not that. I literally came off the boulevard in Santa Ana, and I was feral, like literally feral, and they weren't like me. Like, it was just weird. They weren't like me. You know, if they had a problem, they'd sit down and talk about it, and I would just rip people up out of the out of the sober living, you know. And what happened, though, when I was at that treatment center, the H&I panels would come in, and this is my H&I pitch, but the H&I panels would come in, and they'd do these panels, and they talk about, you know, getting a sponsor and coming to meetings and working the 12 steps and finding a power greater than themselves and helping the still suffering alcoholic and all the things that you'll hear in every AA meeting, right? And I'd think, wow, like, this program is really great for somebody like Mike, who obviously needs it, you know, but like what's it going to take for me, right? Like, what does Tara have to do? And I remember them talking about prayer, and they were like, you know, you got to pray. And I don't know why I retained certain things, but it was like, you got to pray, and it has to be like, if it be thy will. And so I didn't sleep for 30 days. I was violently ill in this detox, and so I was like, all right, I'm going to try this prayer thing. And I was like, dear God, please send me a hot tattooed convict to occupy my time, if it be thy will. Amen. And so, wouldn't you know it, the very next day, Zachary Michael Logan showed up, tattoos on his face. He had a backpack, right? Skateboard, but like a really nice backpack, okay? And like his gate money and stuff. And I was like, it's God's will, right? Who am I to stand in the way of God's will? And so, thus ended my stay at Casa del Cerro Treatment Center. I don't know how it is out here, but they take that fraternization stuff so seriously in Orange County. I mean, come on. I can't do drugs, I can't drink, and come on. Like, a girl can only take so much at a time here. And so, like I said, it was just in and out and in and out and in and out of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I kind of thought that, like, I was past the point of redemption, I was past the point of God's love, and I was just going to die cold and alone in an alley in Santa Ana. And in Bill's story, he talks about, like, I knew that, and I welcomed the idea. And anybody that knew me, my parents, my siblings, they all knew that one day they would be identifying me in the morgue, and I knew that as well. And I kind of thought that, like, everyone had this preordained destiny, and like, you were going to be a pilot, and you were going to be a nurse, and you were going to be a teacher, and God had just bounced the dope fiend hooker card off my head. He's like, that's what you get. Deal with that, sis, you know. And like I said, I had just resigned myself that was going to be my lot in life, and that's who I was going to be. And thank God for his grace and his mercy, and that's not how my story had to end. And by all rights, it absolutely should have. And what happened is I met some fine people in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I couldn't stay sober, and I couldn't stay sober, and I couldn't stay sober. And I'd come into these meetings, and I wouldn't do the work, and I'd be drunk again. And there was always one more attempt and one more heartbreaking failure. And truly what it was, in hindsight, is that I just so desperately wanted to drink without the consequences. That's what I wanted, to figure it out so desperately, how I could get that relief that comes at once by taking that drink, that pill, that fix, that hit, whatever it was, without all the bad stuff happening thereafter, right? And because my disease demands treatment, and it was going to be treated via chemical means or spiritual means, and I just could not sit here long enough to treat my disease via spiritual means. And I had met some fine people. This one woman named Paula, she was what we call, she was my Eskimo, and she was the first person to talk to me about the disease of alcoholism, and my disease looked like her disease, and she had a message of depth and weight, and I couldn't stay, and she would call me at my parents' house when I was loaded again and drunk, and she would say, "Tara, when are you coming home?" And it was, during those times that I knew that somebody cared about my well-being when I truly did not care whether I lived or died. And I was opting for the latter, honestly. And I had been in and out so much, and even when I was drunk and loaded, I knew that I wanted to get back to you. I knew that this was where I felt love. I knew that this is where I was accepted. I knew this is where I wanted to be. But I couldn't stop, once I'd take that first drink. And what happened is on Thanksgiving Day of 2001, I called another member of Alcoholics Anonymous who came and picked me up literally on the curb in Santa Ana because I frequent the curb for some reason. I don't know. I hang out on the curb. I don't wear shoes a lot of the time in California. And I once lived wearing a bed sheet for like a year. I don't even know why, but that's the truth. I just stayed in a bed sheet. It was just, convenient is what it was. And so he came and picked me up on the curb in Santa Ana, and he was like, "All right, Tara, I'm going to take you to detox, but you don't have anything on you, right? Because I'm on parole," is what he told me, because that's who I call, of course. And I was like, "Oh, how dare you? How dare you accuse a woman of such high moral fabric, right? Of such a thing, who brings drugs into detox?" Me, I do that. That's what I do. And on my way to detox with, alcohol on me, I said a prayer, and I said, "God, if you help me just this very last time, I promise that I will tell other people what you've done for me." And I went into detox and I drank because I had to. And I went through that detox, and, I can't tell you if anything at all was different from this time from the, 20 times before. I do know that I was broken and battered and desperate and hopeless and beaten, and thank God, because from that came willingness, and from that willingness came action, and from that action came permanent recovery. And the most important thing probably that I'll tell you tonight is that the very first time that I worked the 12 steps in order with a sponsor that had a working knowledge of the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, I've been sober ever since. So it could be some freakish coincidence, right? Oh my God, that's so weird. You worked the 12 steps in a 12-step recovery program and you achieved sobriety. Trippy, right? It literally escaped me for years. And so I went into a recovery center. It was a 90-day treatment center. And my friend Paula, she was this dope fiend hooker from Midway City, and she was like, "Look, I'm going to get you into this program, Tara. You're going to talk to the program director, and you're going to tell him that you're willing to do anything to stay sober, even if it means sleeping with him." And I was like, "What? This is my treatment plan, Paula? Seriously?" She's all, "It's funny. He'll love it. Just do it." I'm like, "Oh, okay." And she's like, "You've done it for less." I was like, "Okay. That is fair, And so I walked up to the director of the treatment center, and he's this big old convict dude. And I was like, "Hey, Mr. Treatment Center Director, I need to get into your program, and I'm willing to do anything, even if it means sleeping with you." And he was like, "Come down to my office." And I was like, "Oh shit. This is really going down right now. Paula set me up, And we went into his office and shut the door, and I'm coming up out of my stuff. He's like, "What are you doing? Where are you from?" I'm like, "Santa Ana. It's a barter system. Can I get in or what?" And he declined my advances that day. But I'm tenacious, and I later ended up marrying him and having 3 children, right? And so weird things happen around here, I'll tell you. And I went through that treatment center, and what happened is I got a sponsor. Her name was Lily, and what Lily brought to me at that place was hope. And she told me, Tara, it doesn't matter what you've done, where you've been, how many times you've tried this, you got a shot here, kid. You got a shot in Alcoholics Anonymous to have a good life and be sober, and you don't ever have to drink again. And I was like, well, Lil, unless God comes down from the heavens above and plucks the desire to drink, reaches inside of me and plucks the desire to drink out of me, like, this program just isn't going to work for a girl like me. And that woman looked up at me and told me, Tara, that is precisely what's going to happen. And I was like, I hate it here. I was like, oh God, this is my life, and I'm here to tell you that is precisely what happened. I started working the 12 steps with that woman, and somewhere along the line, that woman put my hand in God's hand, and I had a spiritual experience sufficient to bring about recovery. And I started doing these steps with her, and I started working on that inventory process. And I would see people in the rooms, they would share about doing a 5th step. And I would see these old timers walk up to them, and they would welcome them to Alcoholics Anonymous after they did their 5th step. They'd say, welcome to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'm like, that dude's been here for 6 months. Like, why are they doing that? And I did this inventory process. By that time, I got Paula as my sponsor, and I knew there was nothing I was going to tell Paula that was going to shock her at all. Paula had done it longer, harder, and worse than I had ever done it. And at the end of that inventory process, she asked me, Tara, have you omitted anything? And again, I was like offended, right? Like, oh no, I'm an honest person. And of course, there was like that one thing that I was going to never tell anybody. And I told Paula that day my big, deep, dark secret. And Paula was like, oh, honey, I've done that too. And I was like, you sick bitch, you can't sponsor me. Like, how are you going to sponsor me? Like, you should probably leave my sober living, actually. Like, I'm horrified, And, but what truly happened that day is I began to trust another woman. I began to trust another woman in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I knew that, the slate was clean after that, Like, I never again had to be that woman that was written down on those pages. And quite frankly, I never wanted to be to begin with. And from that point on, I could just be another member in good standing in Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, I did not remain a member in good standing for a very long time, but that day I knew that I was just another member of Alcoholics Anonymous, right? And they told me, Tara, just be another bimbo on the bus, Just be another bimbo on the bus here. Be a worker amongst workers, like just be one of. And I continued on in the work, and I progressed through the steps, and I sat my parents down and did this 9th step amends with them. And by that time, my dad had like double-digit sobriety. My mom was like ahead of him in Al-Anon. She was like black belt Al-Anon. And she was the one who was like, we can't watch you kill yourself any longer. And I was like, you need to stop going to those meetings. They're telling you some horrible information, right? Like, I'm your daughter here, And so I sat them down, and my dad was a long time sober. And he's like, oh, honey, we just want you to be sober. And I was like, yay, I love AA, And my mom, who's the Al-Anon, she had like an itemized invoice of everything I had done since birth, you know what I mean? Did you break the lamp in 84? I was like, fuck. If it was broken or otherwise defaced in your home, it wasn't the 2 reading encyclopedias in their spare time, right? Like, it was me. And so, but we began to mend our relationship, right? My parents, my dad told me that they had a restraining. I was sharing from a podium one night, and he was in the program, and I was like, my parents had a restraining order on me. And he came up to me after the meeting. He's like, we really didn't. We just told you that. I was like, what the fuck? I've been lying this whole time. I didn't even mean to be lying, But we began to repair our relationships. We began to become a family in recovery. And I started doing H&I work with my dad when I was a year sober. I started general service when I was 2 years sober. Basically, my dad and I were just in service all the time. He was just a pillar in the AA community in our area, and just an absolute service guru. And so it was just ingrained in me early on to immediately get into helping the next person, and thank God for that. I love in the book where it talks about, for if we fail to perfect and enlarge our spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice, we're not going to survive those low spots that lie ahead. And there have been some low spots in 22 years of sobriety, and Alcoholics Anonymous has shown up every single time. And I started doing this institutions work with my dad, and we were like inseparable. We were like peas and carrots. I was like, went through 3 pregnancies, walking across like maximum security penitentiary, yards, all out to here pregnant. And the correctional officers are like, "Ma'am, go home." You know what I mean? Like, you're a liability, and I'm like, we can go anywhere any free man goes, sir. You know what I mean? Like, and we would drive 4 hours in the car, me and my dad and this guy, Plumber Jim. They're just these old AA dudes, smoking in the car on the way 4 hours to like a maximum security penitentiary to do an hour panel, and then get in the vehicle and drive 4 hours home with these 2 old guys, and Plumber Jim told jokes, right? And he was a plumber, obviously, and he spoke fluent Spanish, and so he would tell jokes in English and in Spanish, right? And they were horrible in both languages. And I would just I was like 25, and I'm like, oh my God, like, is this what my life has become? And my dad was like, "Tara, you want to sum up service in Alcoholics Anonymous in 4 words?" I was like, "Yeah, Dad, what is it?" He's like, "Get in the car. Get in the car," right? And he's the guy, get in the car. When the AA person's like, "Hey, what are you doing Saturday?" And your mind races uncontrollably because you're trying to tell them something, because if not, you're like going on a road trip, We're going to an area meeting in the desert. I'm like, why? What for? And I can tell you that those moments, in retrospect, were some of the most beautiful, divine, spiritual moments of my recovery, and some of the most, the closest that I have felt to God has been in a chapel in one of those institutions. And I remember going in there with my dad, just every other week we were in there. And I met this gentleman, and his name was Todd, and he shared in the meeting one night, and he said, "I have a life sentence, and I'm never getting out, and I've never been more free." And it's those moments where, like, I'm complaining about the traffic, you know what I mean? I'm like, I gotta drive out here at 5 p.m. in this traffic, and then I'm like, I'm gonna carry a message of depth and weight to these inmates, and every single time that message of hope and redemption and grace and love and mercy is delivered to me every single time. And I've had an incredible journey in Alcoholics Anonymous, and my dad 10 years ago was diagnosed with cancer. He started getting real sick, and I would go over to his house every day at lunch, on my lunch hour. And by then, I was a long time sober, he was a long time sober, and I would think, what, Tara, don't go over there today. It's too hard. Like, just don't go over there today, But you people taught me how to act better than I feel, and you people taught me how to trade my feet. And I would go there every day. And the beauty of this program is that when he took his last breath, I was there with him. And there was nothing left unsaid. There was nothing like, God, I wish it would have been this, or I wish it could have been that, or I wish I would have done this. We were square. Like, AA had given that to us, and so if I lived 2 lifetimes over, like, I would not be able to repay the debt that I have for Alcoholics Anonymous. And It's just been it's been a heck of a ride. I'll tell you, it's been a heck of a ride, and I've had 3 beautiful children in this program, and they haven't seen me drunk or loaded, ever. They've been raised in a sober household with a sober mommy. Their father and I divorced like 10 years ago, separated 10 years ago, and that man is my very best friend in the whole world. Like, AA has taught me how to be an emotionally responsible person, for the most part. There are those instances where, that goes out the window. But, I've got to be there for my children and for my friends. And my friend, one of my best friends, Rachel, her husband was like, Tara, we have this friend, and we're all on parole, so we can't visit him, and will you go and see him? And I had done like years of institutions work, and I was like, okay, fine, like this guy's having a hard time, I'll go and just talk to him, and so I sit down, I'm waiting for this guy to come out, and out walks this like 6'7", like chiseled dude with this just like amazing bone structure, jawline. And I was like, oh dear, and oh dear. And so that's when I met Brian. There's just something about a man in a jumpsuit. I don't know, but I never really believed in love at first sight until that day, and we've been together ever since, and it's just it's so cool to do life with the love of your life, both of us in recovery, and I can tell you that I have found 1,000 ways to fail in Alcoholics Anonymous. Like, I didn't come here and become a real virtuous type of gal overnight, it took me a minute, and for those who are new, I encourage you, if you haven't yet found the comfort that comes in the loving arms of Alcoholics Anonymous, please just stay, because you will. And I'll just tell you this quick story. I was 7 years sober, and this is one of those stories of how I've fallen short, like really short, and like missed the mark, okay? And so I was like 7 years sober, and I had just had my son. I was nursing my son at home, and I got into this fight with my friend Kelly, who I was also her sponsor at the time. She's one of my dearest friends, and I don't even know what it was about. I do know what it's about. She had told me something. Anyhow, we got into a fight, and she told me on the phone, right? I'm at home nursing my child. I'm crazy. I just had a baby. I'm crazy. I just had a baby. I'm crazy. And she told me on the phone, and I quote, "Bitch, come get some." And I was like, I think I will, right? Like, passed the baby off to my mother, right? I was like, I'll be back. And laced up the boots, went out the door, and I called her husband, Kelly's husband. I'm like, I'm out front of Kelly's work right now, right? Like, I was outside of my mind, and I was like, you better tell her to come out in 60 seconds or I'm going in, right? Like, just crazy. And I was like 59, right? Click. And so Kelly didn't come out, oddly enough, right? And so I went over to her house, and I went completely sideways on the front lawn, across the whole front lawn. And then Kelly went into the house and locked the front door and called the police. And I was like, wait a minute, I've come for some, right? Like, I'm here to get some. You told me I was gonna get some, and I'm already dressed. Where is it? And so because I was already ready for some, and I wanted some, I proceeded to kick in the front door, like the beginning of Cops, like, huh, bad boys, like that, and the door kicked open, and the police showed up, and it was just a big whole scene. Okay, it was a huge scene. The husband at the time had to go, like, fix the door and stuff, like, actually making amends on my behalf so I didn't go to jail. And I tell you this story because it was not my finest moment in Alcoholics Anonymous, kicking open the front door of a woman's house who I sponsored, right? But if anyone wants to go through the 12 steps, I'm a great sponsor. But I tell you this because, like I said, I've found a thousand ways to fall short in Alcoholics Anonymous. I've failed a lot of different times in a lot of different ways. But I can tell you that I don't turn down an AA request. I show up, and I'm in service, and I'm very active in Alcoholics Anonymous. Even today, I sponsor a lot of women. I actively am in contact with my sponsor. I try and live by some principles on a daily basis, and I know for me, like, people talk about like steps 10 and 11 of being like the maintenance steps, and for me, I don't want to maintain what I have ever. I want to continue to grow in my faith. I want to continue to grow in my understanding of God. I want to continue to be a better spouse, and I want to be a better mom, and I still want to I know there's room to grow here, and I don't ever want to stop growing, and it's a wild ride, I'll tell you what. I don't know why. Last night we were at the airport, and the flight was canceled, and then we get to the airport, or we get here today, and like we can't get a rental car, and I'm like, whatever, like it's just, I don't even care, like if we make it, we make it, and I've been through a lot. I've been through a heck of a lot worse than a canceled flight, you know what I mean? And so I have this life today that is incredibly good, and I love on my favorite page in the book is page 152, where it talks about what you'll find here in Alcoholics Anonymous, and it asks the question from like a newcomer's perspective, like, do you have a sufficient substitute? Like, what does the fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous have to offer, right? And it tells us right on that page. We have a sufficient substitute, and it's vastly more than that, and it's the fellowship. And here you're going to find release from care, boredom, and worry, and the most satisfactory years of your life will lie ahead. And I thought, satisfactory, like that just seems okay, like, remember the grading system, like what about the O? Can I get the outstanding, and but if you think about that, like just to be completely satisfied, I'm so satisfied with my life today. Like I can tell you, and you might not believe it, but the majority of days, I am filled with joy and happiness, and that's the truth. And I've learned over the last year, I went through this other program, and it was, connected to the church that I go to, and I went through the 12 steps again, and what I really learned this time around is, like, I always knew how I felt about God, and how grateful I was for God, for my sobriety, and for my life, and the things that I've been blessed with. But what I've really learned over this last year is not so much of what I think about God, but what I've really learned is what God thinks about me. And that was a huge thing for me to learn around here, because what it taught me was, like, if I know what God thinks about me, then what does it matter what Sally from the Monday meeting thinks about me? You know what I mean? Like, who cares about Sally? And that was a big deal for me. I'm 22 years sober, and it took me a long time to get to that place. There was a lot of damage and a lot of therapeutic needs that had to be met for me, and that's been one of the big things I've learned in this last year is who I am in God, and what God thinks about me, and his love for me. And no matter how many times I fall short, no matter how many times I fail, I know what God thinks about me, and I know about God's love for me. And, there's been many a days, my dad told me a long time ago, he was like, I remember I was like 9 months sober, and I was in sober living, and I was just not feeling it. You know what I mean? You have those days. Everyone's probably had those days where you're sober, you're just like not feeling it, And I remember my dad told me a long time ago, he's like, Tara, some days all you get is another day sober. That's it. That's all you get. Is that enough? Because there are going to be those days where it's just like stepping in one pile after another. And some days, all you get is another day sober. Is that enough? Right? And I called him at like 9 months sober, and it was just a bad day. I don't know what was going on, but I was like hearing in the meetings, right? Don't leave before the miracle happens. And you'll hear that in the meetings, like, please don't leave before the miracle happens. And so I called my dad. I'm like, so about this miracle, right? Like, where's mine, basically? I was 9 months sober. I couldn't drive until I didn't have a license until I was 18 months sober. I didn't have a car until I was like 2 years. State of California was like, nah, dog, you ain't driving, Mm-mm. And again, they like when you run over your boyfriend, they like frown upon that, And I talked to my daughter today. She just started driving. She's 18. Horrible driver. Like, I've had a lot of trauma in my life. Nothing compares to driving with that girl. I'm not even kidding. So she told me today, she's like, Mom, I was in LA and I was turning and I hit an Asian girl. I was like, what? Like, who does that? I'm like, Mallory, I've been driving 30 years. I've never hit anybody on accident. And she was like, what? Wait, what? I'm like, well, he shouldn't have been hitting me. He shouldn't have been punching me. And I had to, essentially. But I'm off topic. I digress. I'm off topic. So I was like, what's this miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous? And he was like, oh, honey, do you want to know the miracle? And I was like, yeah. And then I was like, wait, probably no. It sounds like, no, I don't any longer want to know it, And he was like, the miracle is that you've been afforded a couple days in a row to watch the miracle happen in the lives of others. And I was like, I don't give a shit. I do not care about what's going on in my sober living, like my sober living roommate, Gail, who I know that bitch slams the doors in the morning. I know she's eating my cereal. Like, I know it's her. You know what I mean? I'm going to catch her eating my bologna one of these days. I am going to catch her ass. And it's on, right? It's on. And so I'm here to tell you that the miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous is that I've been afforded a couple days in a row to watch the miracle happen in the lives of others. And it has been an absolute joy watching the light come on in others, right? And, my first sponsor told me, Tara, as a sponsor, your only role is to gently lead them to God over and over and over again, right? You don't know how to run your life. You certainly don't know how to run their life. Your only role is to show them how you met God over and over and over. Gently lead them to God. And I'll end with this. My whole life, I really wasn't good at anything except fighting. I was good at that. But if I wasn't too drunk, right? If I got too drunk, then I wasn't that good. But anyhow. So I would see people and I'd be like, well, what's my spiritual gift, right? Like, some people are very athletically inclined. Some people are artistically inclined. There are people who are, play like beautiful musicians, and you would think that I would be, like I said, athletically inclined, not. And so what I found here in Alcoholics Anonymous is I found my purpose, right? I found what my spiritual gift is. And my gift that I found here is that I have an endless capacity to love. I can love the unlovable. And my dad told me a long time ago, Tara, you possess the ability to love another person sober. And so, it would be cool to play the flute, you know what I mean? That'd be cool. I'd like that, but I guess I'll take endless capacity to love, if I have to. But I do want to thank you guys for having me tonight. I just want to tell the newcomer, like, I know what it's like to be lonely and scared and sad, and when I was in treatment, separated from my people. And I just want you to know that there's at least one person out there tonight who their very last thought is going to be about you and how much they love you and how much they want you to stay sober and be the daughter or the son or the nephew or the dad that they know you can be, the person we know you can be, because it's happened for us. And I want to thank you all for my sobriety.